the voice of the 76ers on NBC Sports Philadelphia, the television voice of the Sixers. We did this a couple of weeks ago with the radio voice of the Sixers, Tom McGinnis. We got his story of how he got behind the mic, and we're going to do it right now with the television voice of the 76ers, Marc Zumoff, as he joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. An opportunity for us to get to know Zoo as he joins us now here on the Sports Bash. Mark, how you been, man? You keeping safe?
You know what, Michael? It's I'm not any different than anybody else. I'm trying to stay in the present. I'm trying to be thankful. I'm thanking health professionals every day, police, fire, people who put their health and their lives on the line. Doing some work for NBC Sports Philadelphia. I'm really proud of what we've been able to do because, the games, they're our lifeblood. So we've had some simulated games. We've done some replays. There's a ton of content right now on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com, including our podcast, our Sixers Talk podcast. So, we're just trying to make the best with what we got, like everybody else, and hope things turn for the best sooner rather than later.
We're all hoping that, and obviously we have no idea when the NBA is going to get back. But obviously one of the things during this, we're trying to think outside the box, get creative, and one of the things I wanted our listeners to get an opportunity is to kind of meet Marc Zumoff. We see you on TV, we hear your calls, but the journey that it took you to get to that spot, I think, is a very interesting one for all the people in positions like yours, and kind of, give our listeners a little insight on where you started and how some of the different jobs that you had to go through to finally become the longtime voice. What's this now, 25, 26 years with the Sixers?
Yeah, this is my 26th year, and the great thing about our business, Mike, as you know, is that everybody's journey is different. So people say, well, how do you get the job that you have? And the answer is, well, I can tell you my story, but everybody else has their version of it. Real quick, I grew up in Northeast Philly. The Sixers were ironically my first love. My father took me to a game the first year of the team. I fell in love with the whole experience, whether it was the shiny hardwood floor, the bouncing of the ball, the squeaking of the sneaks. Back then, it was the cigarette and cigar smoke that kind of hung over the arena because you were still allowed to smoke then as a fan, believe it or not. And I would go home and I would do games into a tape recorder. And that's kind of how I formulated my style, my cadence, my rhythm. I listened to people like Andy Musser, Bill Campbell growing up. And then, I went to Temple. I graduated. I didn't think I'd make it in the business right away, but I soon discovered that anything else was just a placeholder for me. My passion, I think, my ability, the thing that I was gifted with was my ability to talk on TV. So I got a job at Trenton, New Jersey, reading the news for $110 a week. I parlayed that into a production assistantship at KYW News Radio. It's where I met a good friend of mine who became a PR director for an indoor soccer team, the Philadelphia Fever, in the late 70s, early 80s. He recalled a conversation we had after he left KYW and became the PR guy, where I said to him I wanted to be a sportscaster. He said, hey, we're looking for a guy to be our next Gene Hart. So I auditioned, got that job. They had several games on the old Prism TV, which was the forerunner to NBC Sports Philadelphia. I eventually got hired from that to do halftimes of the Sixers. And in 1994, which was, 26 seasons ago, I had the opportunity of a lifetime and took it and haven't looked back. And I'm very grateful for what I've been able to do to this point.
Now, a lot of us have done all sorts of crazy things. As you mentioned, you work at this station, that station, and you're doing things. What of the play-by-play jobs leading up to the Sixers gig was the most challenging? Because, I've tried hockey before, and I just am not very good at hockey. I've done plenty of baseball, basketball, football. I even do MMA now, which I never thought I'd be doing. I got the opportunity to do it out of nowhere. I just kind of got the feel of all right, I guess I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm not suggesting I'm very good at it at all. I have a very good partner. But what are some of the different play-by-play things that you did before that you were like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to do it to try to get where I need to go?
Yeah, you mentioned several key points there. just in terms of one of the points that I latched onto was relying heavily on your partner. So I've done things like rowing on the Schuylkill, the Dadvale Regatta. I've done bike races. I actually did a horse show one year, the Devon Horse Show. And that's kind of what you do. You show up, you swim in the facts, figures, history of the sport as much as you can. And then armed with that, you rely as heavily as you can on your color commentator. Obviously, I know a little bit more about basketball and some of the other sports. I did get to fill in, speaking of hockey, I filled in for Gene Hart, which is I think some tell me it was the answer to a trivia question, because Gene went years before he ever missed a game. And finally, he had some heart issues, and he had to miss the beginning of a season. I forget, I want to say 1985, and I filled in for him then. Just trying to think of some of the things. I did Princeton basketball for a while, and I remember being at Harvard, and they placed you inside of a cage where I had to broadcast the game through chicken wire. I remember that. I remember another game where, our mixer failed, so I literally was holding the phone up to
I've done that.
To my face, and I was doing a game that way. I know my first ever job. I may have said earlier that I got a job doing news in Trent, New Jersey. They paid me $110 a week, and this was a bad radio station. They were off the air seemingly more than they were on the air. They had me working from 6 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, and I was literally just ripping wire copy and reading it. But even though they were 6 weeks behind on my pay when I got that first check, Mike, and I looked at it, and even after taxes, it was like $86 or whatever. I stared at it and said, I can't believe they paid me to talk on the radio. I'm doing this for the rest of my life. So
that's great.
That's one of the things that really hooked me.
Marc Zumoff, the play-by-play voice of the Philadelphia 76ers on NBC Sports Television. By the way, NBC Sports Philadelphia tonight. You could check out Flyers Rangers NHL 20, and that's at 6 o'clock. Flyers versus Hurricanes from back on March 5th. In fact, that is a win that I have said on the show is the one that made me a believer in the Flyers this year. So that's the game you'll see tonight. Tomorrow you'll see the Signing Harper documentary, which every time that's on, I find myself watching it. That will lead into Phillies and Giants. And then this weekend, a lot of Phillies that you will see Saturday and on Sunday. Marc Zumoff's our guest here. Now, 94, I'd like to kind of get the difference in broadcasting TV from when you started to where you guys are now. Because I'm assuming that has that changed a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I got to imagine that the production stuff has come such a long way from even, 94.
Yeah. So certainly the first thing that came to mind when you started to broach the subject was social media and the advent of that and our responsibilities now in the digital space, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or what have you. I'm constantly interacting with fans during the game. And that is obviously one of the big differences. Technologically speaking, whether it's graphics or replay or high-definition TV, the addition of a sideline reporter are just a few of the things that just come right off the top of my head. Because of the advent of social media and the Internet, we as broadcasters are scrutinized that much more. So you might get off the air and say something stupid and just hope that it goes away. In a lot of cases, early in my career, it did. Well, now, if your voice cracks, there are 900 people on Twitter laughing at the fact that your voice just cracked or the mistake that you just made or, the exchange that you had with a color announcer, which may have been humorous. So I would say that the social media aspect, the digital aspect, along with some of the bells and whistles are some of the key things.
Now, Marc,
another thing is, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I
can ramble all day. I can go to the point where you're saying, all right, I'll do it for our show tonight, and then you'll go into something else.
Well, one of the things I want you had mentioned the color commentators, and you've worked with a few through your time. Just the people that don't understand what the play-by-play job, how the guy that you work with, and then that guy changing so often, how that kind of, because for a while there, you and Steve were together, and then it seemed like you were changing guys almost every other year, and now you and Allah seem to have a little, something going finally that you've got into a rhythm. But people don't understand that how that camaraderie and that connection can help the play-by-play guy.
I certainly think it's like anything else, Mike. When you have someone that you work with in the workplace. And that's why, companies will have team building strategies, or they'll have social events so you can get to know other people as people. And when you return to the workplace, you feel a kinship, you feel they're your teammates, you feel a certain sense of trust. And that's no different from what it is that we do. Al and I would be and in fact, our friends, even away from the floor, we've gotten that close and we talk all the time. It helps to know his career, of course, but also the way he views the game, the stories that he has, the things that he likes to talk about. And basically, I'm the point guard. I'm the traffic cop as it relates to the broadcast, bringing in our sideline reporter, Serena Winters, bringing in graphics or stories or replays or what have you. And as it relates to the color analyst, the more trust that you develop between one another, I think the more chemistry you will have. So I think that I have reached that point. And I don't need people to tell me this was a good call or I didn't like this call or whatever. The thing that I listen for from fans and their feedback is you guys sound good together. You sound like you're two guys just kind of watching a game. So if I can make that kind of connection with my color analyst, I feel I've done a large part of my job.
Marc Zumoff's our guest here, kind of getting to know Marc's career. He's obviously the longtime voice of the Philadelphia 76ers on NBC Sports Philadelphia. And I asked McGinnis this question. I think I know the answer. But do you prefer to call the game from down on the floor or in the upper perch where you guys are kind of on the middle level right now?
So I will say this, Mike, there are clearly pluses and minuses to both. Obviously, when you're on the floor, and we were on the floor during the glory days of the Iverson era, you are in it. So you can call an official over and ask a question. You can take your headset off and hope that you hear a little something from the huddle. You are in the action. I mean, you're as close as the people who pay, I don't know what it is anymore, $1,500 or $2,000 a game to sit on the wood and be that close. So clearly you're into it. But when you're on the floor, frequently players will get in the way, officials will get in the way. Brett Brown, when we're on the floor at other arenas, will get in the way because his coaching style is to be off the bench. So you end up missing certain things from that perspective. I would say it's probably 60-40 for me that I like being on the floor versus up top, but I've gotten used to being 20 or 25 rows up and the advantages that helps the announcer with.
Yeah, Tom had some very similar, that the angles get cut off sometimes and the fans could get in the way when you're down there. But, there's nothing like being right there, the energy of that game and being in the mix. But I want to get your take on the differences in the Iverson era and the current era. Because now we talk about, you talk about falling in love with the game and the floor and just, back then, the presentation of a game now as opposed to the Iverson era. But these seem to be the two most energized crowds, the Iverson era when it was at its height and now. These places are filled, and the presentation of these games, the differences in the presentation from that era and this era.
Certainly because of a lot of the things that we've already talked about, whether it's the internet or social media or that sort of thing. A lot of fans feel like, well, geez, I got replay, I got commentary, I got this, I got my second and third screens. I need to watch the game at home and, maybe I'll get a ticket from somebody and I'll go to 2 or 3 games a year. So what you need to do now in terms of game presentation is you need to make it an all-encompassing fan experience. So it's not just the seat. It's what's going on away from the seat, whether it's dining, whether it's things happening in the concourse, whether it's the big, beautiful screen that they have now at Wells Fargo Center that shows those high-definition replays. I mean, the thing is absolutely ridiculous. And then just the aspect of being there, that there is no substitute for actually being in the crowd, seeing something live, experiencing the cheering of the fans and the interaction with the athletes. I will say this, that Iverson era, those, or I should say the heyday really, 99, 2000, 2001, that ended much the way this team did, a good number of years where the team was not that good.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, our fans, because not that they're normally not loud, but, there are years and years of pent-up energy, frustration, or just saying, I'm not going to come out because this team is not that good. Well, now that we are good, and the same thing with the Iverson era, now that they became good through those 3 years, the excitement is just that much more palatable.
It is definitely a neat experience to be in the building now, just like it was then. Marc Zumoff, if you're at home on NBC Sports, favorite part of getting into and calling a game each night?
I will say that the experience of being on live television is the best element, because your concentration level, Mike, has to be so high in that you only have one chance to get it right.
Yep.
So people, and this is not to diminish people who, perform every day, whether it's network TV shows or whatever it is that's already recorded, and you have a number of times to do it again. You only have that one time to get it right. So your preparation, your concentration, and just your mental faculties have to be really acute in order for you to perform at a high level. So what that says is I make mistakes every night, because I'm human, and to be on the air for 2.5 hours, it's almost impossible to get through without saying something in error or misspeaking or stumbling or something like that. You're live on the air, and you only have one chance to get it right. So I think that in some sense you could experience what it is that I experience about being on live TV.
Marc Zumoff, everybody, kind enough to join us here on the Sports Bash. Give us a little insight on what he does each night, and obviously his path to the 76ers. Much like all of us, did a lot of crazy stuff to get to where he is, but for the last 26 years, you have heard him as the voice of the Sixers. He's at Marc Zumoff on Twitter, and at NBC Philly to see what's going on with NBC Sports Philadelphia. And he was by the way, you also are you have your own production company. Is that correct as well, Marc?
What I do is I do professional coaching. So for people who are either trying to break into the business or people who are already in the business, I try to lend what I hope is a fair amount of expertise involved with performance, preparation, career development, that sort of thing. It's something I really enjoy doing. It's it's kind of a way to give back at this point. So I always invite people to just email me free of charge. They can, find my name on, they can go to my website, find my email there, and just reach out. And I'm more than happy to converse with people. It's something I really enjoy.
Good stuff. Marc Zumoff, we hope you're staying safe, and we'll catch up with you soon. We hopefully will be able to hear you back on a live basketball game sooner than later.
I got you, Mike, and you too. Keep on doing a great job and take care of yourself.
Thank you, Marc. That's Marc Zumoff, everybody, the voice of the Sixers since 1994. A little insight on how he got to the 76ers. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Love those conversations. Always fun.